So how many of you see yourself as kind of a leader in some way? See, nobody wants to raise their hand for that. I want to tell you, you're afraid I'll ask you to do something. That's what I know what's up. I think almost everybody at some point in their life has somebody looking to them for leadership, to help them grow and to help them develop and to help them get where they need to be. So maybe you lead at work or in school or in your unit or your team, or maybe you lead a group, or maybe you lead a ministry, maybe you're leading your family, you're leading your children, maybe some of your friends look to you in some way as a leader. Maybe you're a leader here at this church, but whoever you're leading, it's important to lead well. Because the people that follow you, your followers' future may depend on you. So you might lead people to success in business or in school or on your team. You might lead people to improve themselves or to improve their lives. You might lead someone to a relationship with Jesus or to become more like him. You might lead your kids or your grandkids to become responsible adults or to follow Jesus. So it's really important to lead well. And so what I don't want is the 90% of you that didn't just raise your hands to like check out right now. Like, this doesn't apply to me because I'm not really a leader. Because even if you don't see yourself as a leader, Jesus might. Your situation might change. And you might find yourself in a leadership role that you never saw coming. That's exactly what happened to Simon Peter. You remember what happened to him? He was just at work one day. Jesus shows up at his job site and says, "Follow me." And he called Peter to lead the early church. Sometimes we don't anticipate the leadership role that God calls us to. Right? You guys have heard my story of, I was going to the big church, CBC, and my pastor, Pastor Robert, just called me and said he wanted to take me to lunch. And I mean, honestly, I thought I was in trouble, right? I don't know what this is. I went there thinking I might be in trouble, and I took my checkbook because, preachers. That's the other thing it might be. Man, in an hour, everything changed for me. And I came home that night in a completely different role in the kingdom of God. I came home that night, and I'll tell you what, things also changed for Margaret, for my wife that night, because I came home and she, "How was your day?" "Oh, pretty good. I had lunch with Robert Emmett." She goes, "What? You had lunch with Robert Emmett? What? Are you in trouble?" "Why did your brain go there?" "No, I'm not in trouble." "Well, kind of I'm in trouble, because turns out you and me are going to be planting a church." And she's like, "What?" Like, that's insanity. And if you know Margaret, she would tell you that she's the last person that would ever be considered a leader. She's kind of shy, she's not super confident, she's not really decisive, but whether she expected it or not, whether she asked for it or not, and whether she likes it or not, she's a leader now. And if you want to see it, you should come on Wednesday mornings. That's when we do our shared blessings, and we're passing out all these cars are lined up. 100 families are lined up to get groceries and prayer and car seats and clothes. And Margaret leads about 25 or 30 volunteers to do this amazing ministry every week. And I'll tell you guys a funny story. So my mom is sitting right over here. When we first started the church, she had a dream about Margaret. And you would have to know how shy Margaret was, and especially then. And in this dream, people were coming up to Margaret here at church and asking her questions. "What are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about that? Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it yes? Is it no? Is it stay? Is it go? Monday or Tuesday?" And Margaret's like, "Yes, no, Tuesday, 9 o'clock, go." It's like she's just bam, 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 and people are just like scurrying off and doing what she said. And to us, that was hilarious to think of Margaret in that role. But you ought to come on Wednesday mornings. Because you know what she's doing? Yes, no, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, go, up, down. She is just leading, and this sweet, gentle, like shy girl that I married has gotten like super bossy. And it's like, so all that to say, she's coming to the second service, so also to say, don't assume, right? Don't assume that just because you don't see yourself in a leadership role now that that's not going to change, especially if Jesus should show up at your workplace or your pastor should ask you to lunch. And if you are a leader, or if you want to become a leader, or if you think you might get stuck being a leader, and you want to be a good leader, there are about 13 gazillion books, right? There are 100 million YouTube videos. There is a conference every single day about how to be a good leader. And a lot of them are great. Stephen Covey is great. John Maxwell is great. Simon Sinek is awesome. There's conferences, there's books. Google books on leadership. You won't believe it, man. There's so many. And some of them are really what you think they are, and then some of them are kind of silly. I saw one the other day. It's called The First Two Rules of Leadership. Don't be stupid, don't be a jerk. And some of our staff bought me that book for so it's Pastor Appreciation Day. Hey, Larry, praying for you. So there's resources out there, yeah. But as a Christian, and especially if you lead a group, or if you lead a kids class, or you lead a ministry, or if you have family or friends and you're hoping to lead them to Jesus, as a Christian, it would be nice to have some biblical instructions, right? Not just what Simon Sinek says, not just what that book says, not just what John Maxwell says or somebody like that. It'd be cool to have some instructions from the Bible. It would be cool to have some instructions from Jesus, and like, how did he do it? Because Jesus is the best leader ever, right? Jesus came to lead humanity back to God. So we've been looking at these stories of Simon Peter, and as far as I know, prior to meeting Jesus, no reason to think Peter was a leader of anything that I know of, but Jesus obviously had his eye on Simon as a future leader from day one. So this is John 1:42. This is Andrew, which is Simon's brother, right? He's met Jesus already. He's coming to Simon. He says, then Andrew brought Simon, his brother, Peter, to meet Jesus. And looking intently at Simon, Jesus said, your name is Simon, son of John, but you will be called Cephas, which means Peter. So Cephas is Aramaic. That's probably the language that Jesus spoke. The Bible is mostly written, New Testament, in Greek. And in Greek, that word gets translated to the word Petros. And that's where we get the word Peter. And what it means is rock. That's like the coolest nickname right, for a wrestler or a church leader, anybody, right? Rock. That is, I don't know what, you ever thought about like if Jesus came to your workplace and said, I am calling you. And right now, you're called, but that's like a scary thing, right? Now you're called Larry, but you will be called in Greek, Psychotikapoulo, which means liver of the chicken, right? So I don't know how, I don't know what he has in store for me. I don't know how he sees me, but what he saw in Peter was a rock. He saw stability. He saw leadership, even when nobody else saw it. And even when Peter didn't see it. And maybe he sees you that same way. And it's really awesome to see Jesus like leading Simon, leading him, teaching him and changing him and developing him and growing him from Simon, this fisherman, to Peter, the rock, this leader in the church. And the journey starts with him just being a follower, right? At first he's follow me, right? So now he's going where Jesus goes. He's doing what Jesus does. He's hearing all this great teaching. He's hanging out with Jesus all the time. He's just a follower. And then kind of fast forward. Now he's a leader. Now he's preaching and people are getting saved and amazing stuff has happened. Well, now he's a bigger leader. Now he's leading the New Testament church. Now he's a leader of leaders, right? Later we see Peter, he's actually writing books of the Bible. And those were originally letters that were written to these New Testament churches, right? And he's leading people through these letters about how to follow Jesus. And those letters included specific instruction for leaders in the church. So this is Peter going from a follower to a leader to now a leader of leaders. Look at his instruction. This is 1 Peter 5:1. He says, now a word to you. He's telling people, this is how you live, man. This is how you do it. This is how you follow Jesus. Now a word to you who are elders in the churches. Okay, so this word elders, we've talked about this with some of you. It comes from a Greek word, presbyteros. How many of you came from a Presbyterian background? Anybody? Yeah, quite a few. So presbyteros, that's where that word comes from, and it means like a leader, right? Paul uses that word interchangeably with the word episkopos. How many of you came from Episcopalian backgrounds? A couple of those. And so these words kind of mean the same thing. They both mean like a leader. Some people, your Bible might translate it to bishop, which to me is, just give me episkopos. Bishop doesn't mean anything, right? But it's like an overseer. That's a really good translation, an overseer. And this one, presbyteros, it kind of implies like some experience, right? Some age. And that's why some Bibles translate that to elder. Okay, so what he's talking about is he's given this instruction to the leaders of the churches. So he's about to give these overseers, these leaders in the church, some leadership training. And he's going to do this by teaching them the lessons that he learned from the greatest leader ever, that he learned from Jesus. So I'm thinking, just in case Jesus shows up at your workplace, just in case I take you to lunch, just in case you get thrust into the role of a leader, let's see if we can learn these rules too. So pretty good instruction here. Peter and Jesus use a really interesting metaphor for leadership. They talk about leaders as shepherds. And so I'm thinking like, this was a long time ago. It's like, that's the ones who, what does a shepherd do? They lead the sheep, right? And so they use that for an illustration. And I'm guessing that in this, agrarian culture 2,000 years ago, a shepherd, that made sense, right? That people understood that. That was giving them a metaphor that they could understand. So Jesus called himself the good shepherd, right? Peter refers to Jesus as the chief shepherd or the great shepherd. I think that was, first century Palestine. If Jesus was here preaching to us, he might not say shepherd, because how many of you have sheep at your house? Very few, right? A couple. He might use something different. He might say like coach or captain, CEO, or something that's maybe more like relatable to us. So Peter's first words to the elders, to the leaders, in 1 Peter 5:2 is that they care for, my translation says, care for the flock. The literal translation of that word is to shepherd the flock. That's what it says, to shepherd the flock, to what? Protect them, feed them, teach them, lead them to where they should go. So here's the instructions he gives them. This is 1 Peter 5. We'll start at verse 1. And now a word to you who are presbyteros, who are leaders, who are elders in the churches. I'm an elder too, and I'm a witness to the sufferings of Christ, and I too will share in his glory when he's revealed to the whole world. So if you're looking for motivation, well, I don't want to be a leader. Well, maybe you do, because he says we're going to share in the glory of Jesus. As a fellow elder, I appeal to you to... So here it comes, right? Here comes the instruction to elders. Verse 2, care for the flock that God has entrusted to you. Watch over it willingly, not grudgingly, not for what you'll get out of it, but because you're eager to serve God. Don't lord it over the people assigned to your care, but lead them by your own good example. And when the great shepherd appears, you will receive a crown of never-ending glory and honor. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Think about the people in your life that God has called you to lead, or that he might call you to lead at work, or at school, or on your team, or in your home, or in your church, or in your community. And let's just break this instruction down into 3 bite-sized instructions from Peter. But remember, he learned them from Jesus. So the first instruction he gives, great leaders lead by example. Look what this says, 1 Peter 5:3, lead them by your own good example. So obviously Peter learned about leading by example from the example, right, of the greatest leader ever. So Jesus came to lead mankind back to God, and he was a perfect leader. Jesus was a perfect leader because he didn't just teach the way. He lived it out. He modeled it. Everything that Jesus taught us to do, he did in front of us. He was a perfect model. He was a perfect example. He didn't just teach about compassion, right? He epitomized compassion. Jesus didn't just teach about healing. He healed. Jesus didn't just teach about holiness. He lived it. Jesus didn't just teach about sacrifice. He sacrificed everything. Jesus didn't just teach about forgiveness. He forgave people as they were nailing him to the cross. So that's what great leaders do. Right? They don't just talk, they set an example for their followers. It's so funny because we use the word leader, and like we don't think about what it means. They go first. Right? That's what it means to lead. They're first. They're up front. They lead. And even the term Jesus used, follow me. Right? There's an implication there that he's leading. Right? He's out in front. He's showing us the way. He's modeling his teaching. He's not just shoving us out there. Go do it. He's saying, come do it. Come do it with me. Come do it like me. And no matter who you lead, no matter what environment you lead, and I think it's almost universal, that people respond to and people want to follow a leader who leads by example. And not just by somebody that like stands back and shoves them out into the darkness or whatever. So I'm going to show you a picture of a great leader. This is my grandson, Waylon. There he is. We call him Tex. So this is Waylon, and Waylon is learning to be a horseman. He's very interested in horses, and he loves horses. And a good friend of ours here at church, I don't think he's in this service, is Richard Britz, and Richard has horses, and Richard is he's like teaching him, and he's leading Waylon about how to be a horseman, and he's teaching him all this stuff, and he's riding, and he's practicing, and he's wearing the right clothes, and he's shoveling poop, and he's doing all this stuff, and Richard is teaching him. And one thing that Richard's told him over and over and over and over is the horse needs to know that you're the leader. He wants you to be the leader, but he needs to know that you're the leader. And so when you take those reins, right, you don't walk along beside. You sure would never walk behind, right? No, you're walking, and he sees you're in the lead. And when you lead, the horse's name is Pigpen. Pigpen is like a celebrity horse, seriously. And when you lead, if you lead Pigpen, he will follow you. But can you imagine? This is Waylon leading Pigpen. Of course he follows. He sees where to go. It's fine. He sees who's in charge, right? But can you imagine Waylon? He probably weighs 60 pounds. Can you imagine Waylon behind a 1,200-pound horse? And he's got his hands on his butt, and he's trying to like push him and go. Can you imagine? A lot of bad things might happen. Can you see how ineffective that would be? And so now, as Richard is teaching Waylon to be a horseman, of course, there's verbal instructions and there's teaching and all that stuff, but Waylon responds best. And Waylon follows best when it looks like this second picture. Not a classroom. This is what it looks like. That's Richard. That's Waylon. He's not telling him what to do, right? He's showing him what to do. He's leading by his example, by definition. Leadership means that. Leadership means going first. And if we want to lead well, and if we want to lead like Peter suggested, and if we want to lead like Jesus did, the first instruction is lead by example. So if you're leading at work, you don't tell your employees, you don't just tell your employees to work hard. You work hard in front of them. If you're leading on your team, you don't just tell your teammates to hustle, you show them what it looks like, right? You hustle, and that way it's not only instructive, which it is, but it's also motivational. Not only are you showing them how, right? You're making them want to. Parents, dads, if you're the spiritual leaders in your home, don't send your kids to church, right? Take your kids to church. Don't tell your kids to pray. Pray with them. Great leaders lead by example. I saw it a couple of weeks ago. We had that picnic in the afternoon, and it's 5,000 degrees out there, and it was a lot of fun right up till it wasn't. Right? All of a sudden it's hot, and everybody's, let's get out of here. We're all melting and everything. So everybody's starting to leave. And then here's the first thing I noticed was Pastor Mike. He's got a trash bag, and he's going around picking up trash. He's taking, give me your plate. He's picking up trash. He's picking up trash. He's piling it up. And then Kendall, who's one of our elders, was there taking the trash bags from him and stacking them. I think Joy was grabbing a little bit. It's like people grabbing trash. And guess what happened next? Everybody started helping. Everybody started picking up trash. Everybody started pushing the tables back in place. Everybody started putting things back in order. Everybody started deflating the bounce house and chasing the kids out. You chase the kids out, then you deflate it. Why did they do that? Because great leaders lead by example. It's the first instruction he gives us. Second instruction that we get from Peter. Great leaders lead humbly, in humility. The same verse, Peter says, verses 1 Peter 5:3, don't lord it over people who assign to your care. And that's such a weird term. I mean, I can tell you in my life, other than this verse, I've never heard anybody use that term, lord it over. But what it really means is don't act like you're somehow superior to the people that you're leading. Don't act like somehow you're more important than they are. And again, Peter had a pretty good leadership teacher, Jesus. Matthew 20:26, Jesus said, whoever wants to be a leader must first be a servant. That's humility, right? That's being humble. But again, Jesus doesn't just say we should lead in humility. He lived it. Jesus lived in humility. In fact, look what Paul says. This is Philippians 2:5, and he's going to be describing Jesus. He says, you must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. Even though he was God, he didn't think of equality with God as something to cling to. Have you ever been around to somebody and it's like, I can't do that? Do you know who I am? Have you been around people like that? It says VP on my business card, right? I can't do that. But like I'm clinging to that. I'm holding on to my office, right? I'm holding on to my position. I'm holding on to my title. Not Jesus. Jesus didn't think equality with God was something to hold on to. Instead, he gave up. He gave up his divine privileges and he took the humble position of a slave. He was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he again humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death, the lowest thing, right, on a cross. And it's a really interesting idea. He gave up his divine privileges. You guys know the theological term here? Kenosis. Kenosis. Are you impressed with me now? Kenosis. That means like he emptied himself. That's what that literally means. He emptied himself of these divine privileges that he had. And I've always thought about like, what did that mean? So did Jesus not have all power when he was 4? Did Jesus not know everything when he was 10? Could he ride a bike when he was 2 years old? Could Jesus hit a curveball when he was 4? Right? Did he know calculus in 5th grade? I don't know. I don't think so. Because I think because of his humility, that's some of the stuff he gave up. Right? That's some of the benefit. That's some of the power. If he was playing baseball as a kid and he suddenly started running faster than everybody else, or he's like flying a little bit while he's going, right? Or he's fishing. I think there's fish over there, so he just walked on over there, right? He gave that stuff up. That's what it means. He gave that stuff up. He emptied himself of that. Because of his humility, he gave up his privileges. Right? He laid down his stuff. And it wasn't because he wasn't amazing. And it wasn't because he didn't know who he was. It's not because he didn't see his own value. He gave up those privileges because he saw value in us. Right? He saw value in us. Jesus had no pain, right? In heaven. He had no pain. But he chose. He saw us. And he chose to come here and experience pain and experience the stuff we get, hunger and loneliness and toothaches and betrayal and humiliation and torture and death. And as God, before he was born in Bethlehem, he was exempt from all that, right? But he valued you. And he valued me so highly that he gave that exemption up. And great word, he literally condescended, right? He descended, he came down to be with us. And if you're a supervisor leading employees, or if you're leading a team, leading humbly doesn't mean that you don't still maintain order and discipline and authority. It means you see the people that you lead as valuable, and you see them as worth sacrifice on your part, and you come down. You don't stay apart. You come down to be with them and to lift them up, especially, specifically, if it costs you something. If you lead at work, if you lead at school, if you lead on your team, if you lead at church or in ministry, if you're leading your kids, of course you have to have respect, you have to have discipline, but you can still look at them in humility and you can see their value. You can say, this is someone created in the image of God. This is someone that Jesus thought was worth dying for. This is somebody that I'm willing to make sacrifices for. Right? That's leading humbly. It's caring more about what's best for them and less about what's best for me. My compensation, right? My place on the org chart, my position, my titles. Oh, I'm the vice president of this. Oh, I'm the head whatever. I'm the assistant regional manager. I'm the, whatever I am. People always ask me that, like, well, what should we call you? We come from these different church backgrounds. What should we call you, Larry? Should we call you father? Should we call you pastor? Should we call you reverend minister or something? Listen, no. Please call me your holy eminence. That's all I've ever wanted. And that's what I got to work on the humility. I think I need to. Humility is not about diminishing yourself, though, right? It's not like diminishing your value. It's about seeing your followers' value, and it's about valuing them so highly that you want to be with them and that you want to make sacrifices for their benefit, for their future, for their success, for their flourishing, for their eternity. Great leaders lead by example. Great leaders lead humbly. And then this is the weirdest one of all. Great leaders serve their followers. Again, Peter learned from the chief shepherd. This is what Jesus said, Matthew 20:26. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant. And so that is so bizarre sounding, I think, to us in the culture that we live in. All Jesus' teaching on leadership, and I guess all his teaching, period, they're so, I love this word, counterintuitive, right? They're the opposite of what feels right. They're the opposite of what seems normal. They're the opposite of what we're used to. And you know why that is? Because Jesus is leading us into God's upside down kingdom, where everything is backwards, where we love our enemies, where we give away our stuff, right? Where we trust God more than we trust ourselves, and where we serve the ones we lead. Those are like the opposite of how we typically feel things or experience things or expect things in this world. But that's exactly how it is in the kingdom of heaven. Jesus is getting us ready for that. He's come to lead us into the kingdom of heaven. There's a really great line in The Chosen. Who watches The Chosen? You guys watch that? It's like the greatest show. I love that show. So the disciples the band is growing, right? And Jesus calls Matthew, who everybody hates. Matthew, he's a tax collector. Everybody hates him. And he goes, okay, you can come, follow me. And so he does. And Peter's like, what the heck? Right? And Peter goes like, well, that's different. Do you remember what Jesus says? Get used to different. Get used to different. This is the kingdom of God, man. This is not the world that you've come from, right? We came to change all that, right? We came to bring God's kingdom here. And he's trying to teach us a concept that is completely backwards. It's completely upside down. It's completely counterintuitive, but it's normal in the kingdom. Because in the kingdom, true leaders, real leaders, effective leaders, kingdom leaders don't take from their followers. Great leaders serve their followers. And I think that's why they use this metaphor of a shepherd. He's shepherd your flock. What does that mean? It's like care for the sheep, feed the sheep, right? Get them water, tend to their wounds, right? Pick the stickers out of their coats, serve their needs so that they can succeed and so that they can thrive and so they can flourish. And I'm going to tell you something. This is a really broad leadership thing that we may not see it. It may not seem normal to us. But in leadership, this is a really great leadership idea that we want to help our people succeed and we want to help our people flourish and we want to help our people thrive. And in business leadership or in the military leadership or sports leadership, we want them to succeed and we want them to thrive and we want them to flourish because we want our company to succeed. Right? We want our team to thrive. We want our group to flourish. And that's so if they flourish, if each of our subordinates flourish, then the team is going to flourish. The company is going to flourish. But in the kingdom, same management concept, but a little different motivation, right? In the kingdom, we want people that we lead to thrive and to flourish because we love them and because we want to follow the example of Jesus, because he loved us. He wanted us to thrive, and he wanted us to flourish. So he led by example, and he led humbly, and he served his followers. And I tell you, if you have any doubt about this, go back and read the story in Matthew of him washing the disciples' feet. I mean, all of these things, he told them, right? Example, he told them, I'm doing this as an example to you. And then he literally, physically condescended. He kneeled down to be where they were, to even put himself beneath them. And then he humbly served them in the most humble way possible. He knew who he was. He knew who he was. And he knew what he was about to do. He was about to redeem the world on the cross. He was about to lead a whole new humanity back to God and into God's kingdom. But he so saw the value of his followers that he gave us this amazing example of humility and of putting other people's needs first and of serving the people that he was leading. Jesus is leading a whole new humanity into God's kingdom. Peter led the New Testament church. If you want to lead like they led, lead by example. Lead humbly. Serve the people that you lead. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you because you've called every one of us to impact the people around us. You've given each one of us an important role of leadership. And for some of us, that's at work, and we're leading thousands of people. And some of us in the military, or in our classrooms, or in our teams. Some of it's in groups here at the church, or in our community. Some of us, we're leading our family and our children. But you've given us this really important task. And so thank you that you fill us with your Spirit to lead us and guide us and empower us. And thank you that through the example of Jesus and your word, you show us how to do it. God, just empower us, help us to look to your word for how to lead. And it feels weird. It feels upside down to us. It feels counterintuitive to us. But Jesus, will you show us how? Will you remind us to? Will you empower us every day to lead by example and to lead in humility? And then we would also serve the people that we lead so that we can lead our companies and lead our teams and all that, but more important, so that we can lead our families and our friends and our community and our world to know you. In your name, amen.